What's up, everybody? This is Anthony Walker for Sherdog.com, and this is the daily recap for Fight Week of UFC 229. The event just ended, back in the hotel room, doing it like this for logistical purposes, but because, you know, it's different than what you guys saw before, I wanted to mix things up even a little more and bring on some help. So, got my guys Dennis and Casper of Submission Radio. Two excellent gentlemen who put on very, very, very good content. Best guys out of Australia talking about mixed martial arts. So thought it would be nice to have them join me as we discuss the chaos and calamity that ended up being UFC 229. All right, so Anthony Walker here with Sherdog.com. Got my guys Dennis, Casper from Submission Radio. So we're doing this selfie style. There's Casper right there, full look. There's Dennis right there, full look. All right, so just wanted to briefly talk about what just happened at UFC 229. Yeah. My initial thought is what a terrible way to end an otherwise incredible night. Mm-hmm. We were actually losing our minds in here in the media room with all the action going on. I mean, we were still buzzing about the Derrick Lewis fight by the time Anthony Pettis and Tony Ferguson did their thing, and then to the back and forth action with Conor and Khabib. It was actually a competitive fight and a lot of stretches. We saw a lot of good things from both guys into the finish, and then that. What can you say about it?
I think it was a disappointing situation because, as we said earlier on, this is supposed to be Khabib's crowning moment. You know, that title was very much disputed all week. We were asking people and fighters, who do you think is the real champion? Is it Conor? Is it Tony? Is it Khabib? And really, Khabib put a statement out there. I mean, he finished Conor McGregor. Just that image of Conor McGregor lying there in a heap after being defeated, on his back, on his own logo, on the proper 12 logo, completely unable to do anything. I mean, and then he chose to sort of, I wouldn't say throw it all away, but take the attention away from that because of Dylan Dennis. I mean, what's really the point? And then he's defending it by saying that, you know, Conor talked about my religion, and I'm not against religious people in any way, but this is the side of religion that I don't like, that where it leads to
Casper's
people
getting into the deep thing, I think.
You know, well, look, I think you can everybody can have their own opinions, but I don't think you can really justify violence to defend your own opinions. Right. And I think that's kind of what Khabib did. And afterwards, he was talking about, well, you know, he made it sound like this is something that he had to do, and I don't think he had to do. Well, and also seeing guys like Daniel Cormier and Luke Rockhold, who know him very, very well, and it's almost like there was a wall there. They could barely communicate with him. They could barely get through to him. And I think that kind of shows the difference between someone like Nate Diaz and himself, where Nate Diaz, it was very personal rivalry, but in the end, it was about two guys competing. Whereas with Khabib, I think he just lost control.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things as well, like with what Casper said, sure it is about religion, but I don't know, to me it's not really about that. To me it's the difference between being a professional fighter and being an amateur. And a professional fighter and a champion does not jump over an octagon wall and attack somebody. That's at the end of the day. Now we know during the fights a lot of people are yelling different things at people. I'm not talking about religion or anything like that. Constantly it's happening. There is no excuse to jumping over a fence and doing that, jumping over an octagon cage and doing that. In the WWE, you know, we compare the sport to the WWE, you know, no one's jumping over fences, punching people in the head. So what happened with Khabib was he got angry and he became unprofessional. And it's just not a great look. It's actually a horrible look.
It's a terrible look. The biggest event in what looks like the biggest event in UFC history.
And it's unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable.
It's really just bad behavior. Yeah. But also I also don't want to ignore the fact that bad behavior has been the storyline with this fight in general.
Sure.
You know, and this is the culmination of a lot of things, and this is in no way to excuse what Khabib did, but we also need to keep in mind all the things that led up to this. This started with bully-like intimidation with Khabib and his guys cornering Artem Lobov in the hotel. It turned into a gross overreaction and Conor endangering the lives of people who had nothing to do with all of this. And then it turns into all these cultural insults and digs at religion and race and history and a lot of things that are really uncomfortable subjects that seem to keep popping up in mixed martial arts. And you know, they like to say, hey, stick to sports, but this is one of those times where you can't ignore the rest of the world, because the combat sports world exists within the real world.
I think the interesting part is, even if Khabib took all those things extremely personally, what Conor McGregor said, not only about him but his management, why target Dylan Dennis? The guy who arguably did the least. I mean, if you want to get your revenge, destroy Conor McGregor, which he did.
Which he did already.
I feel like that's where it should be over, and I think Khabib really did what he did was completely unnecessary, and it endangered a lot of people's safety.
Yeah.
You can go further if you want to say endanger people's lives. I don't want to act hysterical. And a lot of people out there saying, oh, at least no one got hurt or got killed, but it could have been possible. I mean, it could have been a huge riot.
It could have been a stampede of people, and someone get crushed. Like that has happened before at concerts and clubs when fights and shootings and things break out. So when you have unsanctioned violence in a place that has a lot of people, these are real threats that have to be kept in mind. And how crazy is it that now we finally get a little clarity to the lightweight title picture. We finally get that matchup that we wanted. Khabib was the uncrowned king and McGregor was the absentee king. And they finally met, and this is what happened. And now we're not talking about that. We're talking about bullshit after the fact. It's really a sad way to end a otherwise perfect evening of action.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Khabib kind of shitting the bed a little bit, because in a lot of sense, if he would have just beaten Conor McGregor and got in that octagon and said, look, I just beat Conor McGregor, I moved past this, that's the statement that people are looking to make. But it's kind of like when you're in high school and you want to beat another kid up. The school, and rather than school telling you, hey, you guys can't do that, I feel like the UFC sort of, in a few ways, sort of put a few catalysts in the background. The country versus country, the bus throwing incident, the team versus team. I mean, just in being in the arena for that weigh-in, they were playing so much amped up music, even I could barely sit in that chair without jumping up and dancing around. The true story for me here was, it was two of the best fighters in the world fighting each other. I'm bringing up the John Malkovich promo for the 100th time.
Which was incredible.
And that is the thing that gave me goosebumps. And that is the thing that made my hair stand on the back of my neck. And I believe that if Conor McGregor didn't bring up Ali or Noah or any of this bullshit, and the focus was on the fact that these two guys are the best, and what would happen if they got in an octagon together, I believe this fight still would have done really, really well. So
I agree with that too. And I find this interesting for another reason as well. And Casper, I definitely want to get your thoughts on this. So it's no secret the UFC wants Conor McGregor to be the champion.
Yeah.
The guy sells a boatload of pay-per-views. He generates all this interest. He is an ATM for Dana White and Endeavor. So no secret they want him with that belt. So now Conor McGregor lost legitimately. He has no legitimate claim to any title in any way, shape, or form now. But now, Khabib has opened the door for this title to be snatched from him out of competition, and they're going to try to find a way to put it back toward Conor McGregor. We got Tony Ferguson just put on an incredible show, cut an incredible promo for us at the post-fight presser. Then we have Nate and Dustin Poirier coming up in a matter of weeks, and you've got these options. If Bob Bennett throws fire and brimstone upon Khabib Nurmagomedov, if his visa has some problems now because he's involved in a huge brawl that, according to Dana White, the governor of Nevada had to literally run away from. I mean, this just opens the door to get that belt back in Ireland. So, Casper, please tell me what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it hinges on what the punishment is for Khabib. We were speaking to Brett Okamoto just before, and he kind of expects that a lot of this will probably be swept under the rug.
I expect that too as well. Yeah.
And if that, I mean, Nevada, the commission, they do like money. I think that's been pretty well documented. So then, if Khabib is able to fight again soon, you look at the other options. Now, do you do Khabib versus Tony Ferguson? I'd love to see that fight. It's a fight that I'd like to see one day. But I don't think the UFC are very interested in that fight. If you're going to be main eventing that as a pay-per-view, the likeliness of that falling apart is pretty high. I think it's going to be the Conor McGregor rematch. We saw with the Nate Diaz rematch, as you mentioned, Conor McGregor lost legitimately, but he did that in the Nate Diaz fight as well. And how big was the rematch? you can just imagine how massive the rematch between this fight is going to be. People will be tuning in, not only for the fight, but just to see what happens after the fight. The fight week's going to be crazy. Pretty sure we're going to be flying down for that one.
I'm pretty sure half the commercial's been filmed already.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But you know, I've got a different perspective on this, and it's this: in a few weeks from now, if Nate Diaz beats Dustin, I believe a Nate Diaz-Khabib fight would be an absolutely massive fight, because you are looking at a guy who has had physical altercations with the Team Khabib, but this isn't Team McGregor, this is Team Diaz, and they have plenty of footage of those dudes walking through the casino with their black t-shirts, and you can sell that thing very, very easily. That would be a big pay-per-view fight, and then the winner of that could possibly get a Conor McGregor. If Khabib loses somehow tonight, then he could fight Conor McGregor possibly, or obviously Nate winning would create another Conor McGregor fight. And if you're the UFC and you think, hey, Khabib will beat Conor McGregor again, and we might lose our big money man in town, and we want to make sure this guy stays up the top longest, hey, maybe you do sort of bypass that rematch. You go behind what the media is saying of, nah, we didn't think it was a good idea because of, you know, the safety reasons, and we don't want to reward this, when in reality we sort of maybe want to hide the fact that you lose again, and you make that rematch between Nate and Conor if Nate beats Khabib, or if Khabib beats Nate. Then there's been enough time where this thing sort of died down a little bit, where they can sort of use all that footage and promo. So, but if Dustin beats Nate, I do think that rematch would be made. I don't know.
I feel like that Diaz rematch could happen anytime, even if, say, they do the Khabib-Conor rematch, Conor loses again, and you could still do that Nate Diaz fight. And that's kind of like your money fight in the back pocket. Yeah. So I think that's a possibility.
And don't forget, when Tony fights Khabib, you don't know that Khabib's going to beat Tony.
Right.
And if Tony beats Khabib, what do you do? Do you do a rematch with Khabib with no title involved, just out of a grudge match? Or do you kind of lose some of the steam behind it? I suppose a belt sort of matters, kind of, still.
Well, belts kind of come out of nowhere, and they seem to disappear in the thin air as well. So, I mean,
to me, Tony Ferguson is the champion here, because he came back from a massive injury. He acted a bit zany during fight week. He said some pretty silly stuff sometimes, but he kind of came back, and he's kind of the guy that kids can kind of look up to, and is kind of an example of a true champion. You know,
I mean, Tony Ferguson gonna Tony Ferguson. Like that's what he does. He says crazy things. We enjoy it for what it is. It makes him who he is as a fighter, I believe. You know, the guy who so effortlessly can reference Ninja Turtles and, you know, and whatever else he wants to talk about, and make these strange connections between totally unrelated things. Is a guy who can string together these weird combos, and, you know, and rehabs himself 5 months after a catastrophic knee injury.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, he is not like us. He is a different breed of human.
And he thinks different, tweets differently, and he talks differently. But just quickly on just the Conor McGregor and Khabib fight, I believe that Conor McGregor had a terrible strategy in that fight. He moved forward the whole time. I thought he was going to move backwards and cut angles and make Khabib move forward. Why? Because if Khabib's move, that's right. And as you know, obviously you're a great striker yourself. We saw you in the boxing machine at the karaoke bar. When Khabib is moving forward, there is momentum behind his head, behind his movements. When you land a counter punch, that has more power, that has more knockout power. The guy does not have a great guard. But if you're moving forward the whole time, you open up yourself for takedowns, you open yourself up, because he was leaping forward, he was lounging forward, and you can see the fact that he couldn't get his distance down today really frustrated Conor McGregor. Did you see how many jabs he was trying to throw out there to try and figure out? He thought, I believe, I'll go in the pocket, I'll get my distance, and I'll finish this thing off, but he could not get his distance, and that's where these knockdowns happened. Because he doesn't care if Khabib hits him or not. He's happy to do that, because like with Eddie Alvarez, like with Jose Aldo, he's happy to be in firing distance because he wants that chance to slip and counterpunch, and he's happy to be sort of hit because he believes he can take the shot, but he believes most of the time he can move out of the way of that shot and land his own counter strikes. And he just looked off. That precision wasn't there. And even though his team was telling him to try and move back, try and come down, that wasn't there. And I saw Conor McGregor in that octagon who was very nervous before that fight started. So, yeah.
So
just quickly, final thoughts. Just going back to that incident, I find it almost poetic in a bad way that this whole thing kind of started with Khabib confronting one of Conor's friends and it ended with Khabib confronting Conor, one of Conor's friends. But unlike at UFC 223, where Conor came down and sort of had that whole ambush, here Conor kind of just had to sit there. He was destroyed after the fight. He was exhausted, and he basically had to watch. So this whole narrative of Conor will do anything for his friends, and he'll come to their rescue. And he just wasn't able to do that. Not only that, but a couple of Russian guys jumped in the cage and then assaulted Conor afterwards.
And Adam Lobov loses another fight. So
yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen with and man, Dylan Dennis, the whole thing. I mean, look, I messaged Owen Roddy, his coach, and I asked if everything was okay, and he said they're doing fine, and they're sort of trying to figure everything out at the moment. And I saw John Kavanagh put up a really good tweet about how it was a good fight and all this stuff, and they're sort of Team McGregor is sort of not really trashing Khabib like they could and jump on Twitter and say this is outrageous. And, Conor McGregor didn't lay any charges and stuff like that. But you do get a sense that Conor McGregor is very disappointed in his performance. And I'm wondering if it's going to lead to him improving his skills, or it's going to lead to him looking in his bank account and saying, well, I got $150 million and about 150 million opportunities. Is this going to be my future here in the UFC?
That was my conversation with Dennis and Casper of Submission Radio. Be sure to check out the content that they're putting out. Excellent podcast, great interviews, wonderful gentlemen. Can't bestow enough praises upon those guys. So much love to Submission Radio for the help. And I want to direct your attention also to, of course, Sherdog.com. Got excellent post-fight content that's already live. Got my regular post-fight column, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It should go live tomorrow or today by the time you see this video. So anyway, appreciate you guys staying tuned, checking out Sherdog.com on the YouTube page, everything. And until next time, stay sexy. Peace.